last time. It was a bit quiet for a second. And good evening, one and all. It's Martin Sharp here, and today I'm joined once again by David Marsh. This is the follow-on to our expert view around psychometric profiling. We're doing a interview-style talking business. Of course, obviously, we went through a whole lot of absolutely fantastic information from David during the expert view, really looking at what you can get from psychometric profiling, how you can use it for your business in a sales capacity, and also from working out how to work best in your team, and then actually what it actually shows about you, showing a few real interesting tools of how you can actually use this, and hopefully you guys have been away and started playing with the tools yourself. So, without further ado, if you do have any questions that come up, then please pop them into the chat window. What we'll do is we will try and get that around to those a little bit later in the interview. But to start the ball rolling, I thought we'd start off with maybe looking at what's probably one of the worst kind of situations you've come across, David, where psychometric profiling actually made a massive difference in that company.
If we're talking about how to make a positive difference,
yeah, yes, please.
Yeah. Well, first of all, excuse my red jumper and red skin. I think we've got the heating up so hot, so high here. It's last time we were together, we were talking about storms and 35 mile per hour winds. Well, we got the 35 mile per hour winds up north here, and you were saying this morning when you left, Martin, that you had snow. Blimey, so
yeah. So I've got the honorary white top for the snow, definitely. So
that's the appearance. I think when we get into those situations, it's usually one of two scenarios where you get dragged in because it's not quite going right, or the organisation decides it wants to do something in terms of going forward and growing. So sometimes when it's not going so well, usually one of two situations. It's usually a family-owned business where it might be first generation, second or third generation even, and a couple of the family members of the family who work in our operation don't get on. Families are families.
Yeah.
And I think the most visual way I can explain that is there was a family that owned a car dealership. Well, there is a family that owned a car dealership. In fact, they own 6 car dealerships. And to go and see Brother One, you went from the left-hand side of the building up to the second floor, and there was Brother One. To go and see Brother Two, it was at least an 800-yard march to the other end of the building, the right-hand side of the building as you saw it, up to the first floor, and there was Brother Two. And they just didn't get on.
Oh, crumbs.
They just don't get on because they're still around. And the thing about the organisation, of course, is everybody knows that. And it has an impact. And it means that the energy of the business is focused more internally, not externally.
Yeah.
So you're burning your energy on trying to get it right, or trying to keep things going within the business, and almost at the cost of ignoring your customers. Then at the other end of it, outside of family businesses, you have what's the phrase you use? Dictators?
Oh, crumbs, yeah.
I think we're just about allowed to use that term. But, for some of us of a certain generation, when we're growing up, many of the businesses around were run by what you could call dictators. Whatever they said went, and if you didn't like it, you're off.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of okay then, I guess, but these days you just can't do that. People won't let you get away with it. People have a voice. There are movements, there are laws, and all those type of things. But sometimes you get dragged in, and you don't have to look far, because it's the person in the chair who, whether you want to call this person a dictator or even a bully, that's what's being passed down the chain. That's the culture of the organisation.
Yeah.
Usually a high turnover of people in a company like that. As I say, it's a dying art to be a dictator in commercial business these days. So I'd say they're the two scenarios really, where it's kicking off in the family or it's kicking off in the business because the person at the top is just very difficult to work with.
Yeah, it reminds me actually of one of my other clients I was chatting with, and they do a lot of work within the NHS space. And they were saying similar kind of things, in the fact that there seems to be these kind of mini kind of dictators all the way across, where they're very much about sort of collecting these vast amounts of power. It's mine, it's my precious kind of thing. And yeah, it makes it so difficult really to work with in that kind of environment. So when you kind of come across that kind of environment, how would you use psychometric profiling and kind of the business profiling to kind of make a difference? What would be kind of some of your first key steps?
Yeah, that's a great question actually. The first key step is for ground ruling around, well, a couple actually. One is around honesty. That's the most difficult one to nail down, because people will nod and smile and then not be honest with you. So that can take a little bit of time to put in place. And the second thing, so with honesty, you get trust. That's one of them, of course. And the second thing is leave your politics at the door.
Yeah.
And there's normally the leader of the business. This is who you're getting to say this, as long as they're not the dictator. So they set the scene, really, the atmosphere, the environment, and people will test you. Mm-hmm. Not in a psychometric way, but in a public way, because that's their personality. That's they have that type of ego. But once you get past all of that type of thing and the barriers come down, and you've got that open and honest kind of environment where there's trust, then you can do magic. Mm. And again, you've probably experienced the same thing, Martin, and people who are watching us as well. Where once you get that in place, there is such a difference in the organisation. And you'll know in the business you're working in right now whether there is trust or there is not trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good, actually, because regardless of what the tool is that you use to kind of make that happen, it's actually a very similar message. There's a lot of leadership coaches that are actually in this group as well, so conversations I've had with people like Ross and Sven and others, that is all about like building that kind of very trusting environment. In many cases it does start from the top, and I would almost argue, from my perspective, it always starts from the top, because you've got to kind of set that level of what you expect. And I know kind of the usual excuse is that you can't dictate a culture, you can't mandate a culture, you have to let it bloom and blossom and grow in its own kind of right. But I still think there's a lot that you can do from the positions that you hold and the values that you hold dear, that kind of either grow a very positive culture or can grow an incredibly negative culture.
Yeah, there's a global organisation at the moment that to work with, and used to work with actually, and they're going through a situation where, in terms of numbers of people, they believe they have too many people for their operation, and so the process is that you're interviewed for your role. Many people have been interviewed for their roles before. Then it's introduced as two people being interviewed for one role.
Yeah.
And maybe three people being interviewed for one role. I was talking to somebody, a coach, just last week actually, who 3 times went through that, was successful, and then after 6 months of that, the organisation announced it was going to close the office, which was in Edinburgh, and you could keep your role, which is now in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And that type of thing, again, somebody who's put that together and thought that through may think that's a good way to reduce numbers. People your best people are the ones most likely to leave, he said controversially, because they just won't put up with it. So your best people have gone, and particularly your most experienced people have gone, and then you're trying to work with an operation where there's no trust.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks there's this big plan to get rid of everybody. And again, that energy then starts to go internally into the business, where people protect themselves and play politics and all those sort of things, and not outwards towards the customer. So sometimes these things, the way that they're thought through is one thing, then the way they're delivered into the business can be, shocking at one end of the scope,
Yeah, and I think, again, it's the whole communication word, isn't it? It always comes back out to something along those lines. I know from the number of mergers and acquisitions I've been involved in, and building those kind of transitions plans around how you make that happen, whether you're acquiring a business unit, you're divesting a business unit, or you're buying a business or selling a business, whatever's kind of going on there. As soon as anybody has any kind of wind of it, you know that whatever way that they could take it, the worst possible way is the one that they're going to use, and that will just spread like wildfire. So you have to kind of be very quick to get on top of that and really pass a very clear message out. And that message doesn't have to always be one that says we know everything, or this is exactly how it's going to happen. But it does need to be very clear and transparent and honest, and kind of really give people the understanding of where they are. Because at the end of the day, you're right, everyone's going to be very worried about their jobs. And in any kind of amount of uncertainty, it is always the best people that go first, because they can just leave, they can get another job somewhere else, and that's where you kind of sometimes get left with departments or businesses that are just full of just like B players or Z players in some cases, and they kind of looking around thinking, actually, how do you improve the performance of this team? Where do you start with the training of that side of things? So yeah, it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's great point. So that's some of the more downsides of it, if you like, that can happen, situations that can happen. And one of the key things we do with businesses is, one of the first questions we ask is, who are the talented people in your business? And you either get, here's a list from 10 years ago, or what do you mean? And as soon as people go, what do you mean? It's okay. So in terms of a business, that's probably not something you've looked at. Mm-hmm. So identifying that, it's usually about 20% of the work population. And as we said the other night, if you're a one-person band, that's you. So you've got to put 20% of yourself to one side and think about it.
Yeah.
But when you're making decisions where you want to do something, if you make those in the boardroom, or you get consultants into the boardroom, and then it's delivered through your next level of leadership or management, and your next level and your next level, every time it goes through that level, the two things that seem to happen, Martin, is one, they shorten the time scale, and two, they increase the target. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason they do that is a bit of protection, of course, in case it doesn't quite work at their level. They got some protection because they built time scaling and performance.
Yeah.
The thing is, of course, when you do that down multiple layers, if you're a corporate organisation, it gets to the front end, and it almost seems like it's an impossible job that can be, or impossible role, or target, or timescale. And then around the coffee machines, those people at the sharp end who are dealing with customers start slagging off, for want of a better phrase, the leadership, the management, the products, the service, and on it goes. Mm. So if you're wanting to do something particularly fundamental in the business, whether it's yourself or you've got more people in the company, just stopping and looking at it from a different perspective, i.e. your talented people around you, they'll give you the common sense and the reality and the truth.
Yeah.
Because still, when you look at the Times top 100 organisations, and probably down to 250 and further, the people on the board have no representation of their customer base whatsoever. They're different thinkers, they're different education, they're different colour, different culture, whatever. No, so it's left at the people at the front end to try and work that out and work with it. So the idea of your top 20% of talent is that these are people who are nearer to the customer. They cover pretty, more demographics than the people in the boardroom do.
Yeah.
And they'll give you practical and common sense solutions. Because you're looking at numbers and things maybe most of the day yourself, that you won't see. And that's, Martin, I'd say when that is in place, that is the biggest difference for turning an organisation to where it wants to go than anything else we've ever done.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I think in some respects, you've got to have people that have that appreciation that there is those different role types, because the higher you kind of get in an organisation, yes, you kind of have to shoot from the hip sometimes, because you're going to get the information delivered to you today. You've got maybe a day or two to be able to make a decision on something, and you have to make a decision on the facts that are presented to you. And these facts, in many cases, you're not going to be the expert on, so you kind of trust what everybody's feeding up towards you. And that means really a lot of the deep thinking, the kind of the time, the analysis, the real understanding of the nuances or the clients or anything else inside the organisation really has to be divested downwards. But that kind of brings this levels of trust. But then there's kind of always this bit of friction, because you kind of find, and in many organisations, not all organisations, but certainly many that I've worked with, you've got this distrust from the ground roots, that kind of thing, that, what the hell the management know, they're kind of on cloud nine, they don't know what's going on, they're not here doing actual do, they're not seeing the problems, and likewise you've kind of got the view from above, where they're looking at, oh God, why is it taking so long, why is the cat just come up with an answer, what's the kind of taking the issue here, why can't they really just push these things forward, so they realise how urgent it is that we'll get something done. And this gap you've got in some organisations can be a gulf, and it's very interesting. Again, for me, it's back down to that communication thing as to how we can kind of start to bridge that.
Actually, at the other end, Martin, one of our newer customers have only got 2 people running it. Mm-hmm. They met accidentally. They met in a lift. That's the story. And one person knew about the industry inside out, and the other one's very technical. And when you get somebody who's kind of more salesy, if you like, front end marketeer, and somebody who runs the engine of the business, who's very technical, very focused, very detailed, what you can get, and what we've got in this case, is people at 2 extremes. And when they go to the extremes of their personality, it kicks off. They've got 3 employees at the moment as well. It really does kick off, and mood set in, and people get upset. It takes days to get over, and then what happens is they come back into the middle ground. So as long as they're in the middle ground, they're pretty safe, and that's the case for most departments or organisations or husband and wife, husband and husband, whatever it happens to be. When you're in that middle ground working together, it's fine. When you go to the extreme of your personality, if they're different, it causes misunderstanding, miscommunication, emotion, moodiness, or whatever you want, grumpiness. Everybody else sees that, of course, but that's back to the family almost, the family organisation. That's what can happen. So keeping the effort of the business in the middle ground gives you that kind of, it operates quite well then. When it goes to the extremes, it tends to start breaking down. That's what we've learned.
I can definitely agree with that. And I think some businesses seem to have coping strategies for dealing with that and managing it better than other businesses. I know one small business owner, well actually it's a pair, there's Robin and Andrew, absolutely fantastic guys, and exactly as you're describing, Robin's absolute out and out sales and marketing, he could definitely sell ice to Eskimos, that kind of guy. Whereas Andrew's an absolute egghead technical guy, down to earth, both absolutely brilliant guys, but I know that sometimes they do disagree, and I've been there when they have disagreed, but because they've got such commonality and they're both striving for the same things, and actually at the core their values are really, really solid together, and they're very, very united. When they do hit those kind of extremities, it is literally just that. They see it, recognise it, have the kind of time away from it, and then come back together and push the business forward. So I think for them it kind of works really well, and I've seen that work with a number of different businesses, but they have to kind of build this foundation at the beginning. A bit like whenever you're kind of doing any kind of change or trying to introduce anything into an organisation, or even bringing in a new client, the reality is you want to have those conversations about, what happens when the times are tough, the days that we don't disagree, the days when we have an argument, the days when something fails or we don't deliver or whatever else it is. Because if you don't have those conversations when you're calm, and actually when everyone's quite happy and buoyant, then when you try to do that at the heat of the moment, you're scrabbling around to build some kind of ad hoc process. It just doesn't work. It just causes even more chaos and more friction and more frustration. Certainly my experience.
Yeah, and I guess you're aware of Tony Robbins again, of course, and the people listening and watching may be aware of Tony, and he talks a lot about patterns. And how your brain works and reacts, and it's so true, isn't it? That if you're put in a certain situation or scenario, like for instance, we mentioned the word spider, right? For some people, we go, fine, no problem, I'll just put it out, I won't kill it. Some people will kill it. Some people will be petrified, literally scared almost to death by it. These are all phobias we've learned, by the way, because unless it's a loud noise and falling, we've learned it. Somebody's taught us it. But what Tony says, of course, is we're playing the same pattern in our heads every time. Every time a spider is mentioned, we play that pattern in our head. Or every time somebody says to you, you can't do this, pattern goes off. Particularly if it's your business partner. At their extreme, your extreme kicks in. So Tony's saying that understanding that is one thing, because a lot of people don't really know what's going on. They just know that the other person's getting a bit excited. But the way to break that pattern is to shock people out of it. So sometimes if you watch Tony, he uses bad language, that type of thing. But usually that pattern you're playing, you've learned from something that's happened in your life, some traumatic experience usually. So, on a lesser traumatic experience, I've never ate green vegetables since I can remember. Yeah. And now, having turned around another birthday, started trying a few, love them. What's 50 years? What's all that been about? It's because some kid of 6'6" called David Marsh was telling me all through my life I didn't like them. Because he played the same pattern over and over again. So the shock, if you like, was to actually try one. So broccoli, bring it on. Asparagus, wow, never would have dreamed. So, whatever the situation is, it's that we're playing those patterns. And if you want to change what you're doing, that's what you've got to do. You've got to kind of break that pattern, I think.
Brilliant. Well, if a friend of mine, Renee's listening, that sounds like we've got another buyer for your lovely vegetable muffins by the sound of things. So fabulous, love it. Just while we're here, just anybody, if you've got any questions, please remember to post them in the comments, and we will get round to those in a couple of minutes. It's good to see you guys all online as well, and hopefully you guys are getting some good value from this. So just to kind of turn it around a little bit, because we've actually done a fair bit of analysis of kind of what the problems can be in an organisation, and why understanding the different personality types you've got in your organisation is quite important. Probably good to maybe focus a little bit more on actually what we can do about it moving forward, because there is many occasions where actually bringing in an arbiter or a coach or somebody who's actually third party to the organisation is the only way to actually kind of break that moment. And kind of just harking back to what you were saying there about patterns, is that pattern interrupts at that point in time, because there is no ability then to replay the same patterns. You've got now a third party inside joining in whatever the conversation is. So what kind of would be some of your kind of key thoughts on making an organisation work even better in those kind of circumstances?
Yeah, good question, Martin. I think you get three types of employee. When you announce something, you get a, yeah, come on, we can do this type of employee. And then you get the ones in the middle go, seen it before, mate, but all right, I'll live with it. And then you get the third one, which is, who do they think they are? They don't know what they're doing. And they're the people you tend to see around the coffee machines. They like a crowd, and they like to preach why everything's wrong and it's all falling apart. So part of the organisation, how it can improve, is to get the 66% of people who are very enthusiastic. You can get people who are over enthusiastic, of course, because they're off saying things to customers you can't deliver yet. So you've got to manage that. And the others who are happy to, well, they'll live with it. They've seen it before, but convince me it's right this time. The more you move those 66%, if you like, 1%, 2%, 3% forward, the ones who are around the coffee machines are starting to get isolated, then they get exposed, and then they tend to leave because their audience is gone. Versus where the organisation is trying to reduce numbers, we were talking about earlier, and it tends to be your best talent that leaves, and you're left with your less best talent, if that makes sense. In this scenario, you keep your talent, and the ones that are not so talented for the business and industry you're in will naturally leave because they've been exposed. And how can you do that? It's just really understanding, what motivates your people. What is it they're after? Why do they come to work? People might say to you, I come to work because I have to, or I have to earn the money. Well, okay, let's scratch a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah.
Why do you need to earn the money? Well, because I'm buying a house. Right, there's a motivation, you see. Or I have children, there's a motivation. Or I want to retire early, there's a motivation. So the more, I'd say, an organisation understands about that, and the more they help employees get what they want, towards what they want, as long as it's legal and ethical, of course, the more they do that, the more they're going to get engagement, and then loyalty, and then trust. And the more it goes forward. You've been in organisations where it has a high turnover of people. You've been in organisations where it has a low turnover of people. And that's usually the difference, that the employees, the people in the organisation, firstly feel part of it, and secondly are going somewhere towards where they want to go in life.
Yeah. Because
the company is half aware of it, if you know what I mean. And employees tend to be different people at work than they are in their own life, particularly the larger the organisation becomes.
Yes.
Funny that, isn't it? So the more you can make, sounds a bit crazy, but the more you can make the workplace a bit like the home life, if you know what I mean, the more you're that person. It's like pouring water on them, Martin. They flower up and come up with ideas and want to get engaged, and and enthusiasm grows. Not everybody wants to be like that.
No.
But as long as you've got a third of the people like that, a third of the people in what can we say, the sausage machine, the core of the business that produces things, as long as that they're happy and stable, and then those disruptors, whatever type label we want to give them underneath, and not disrupting the other 66%, the business can only go forwards.
Yeah, and then there's I find there's lots of other tools as well that can help with that, because the reality is it's another normal distribution curve. Really, you're going to have that at the front runners effectively that are pushing things forwards. They're a bit more radical, they're willing to accept a bit of change. They're kind of coming up with the ideas, making sure things are happening. Then you kind of got the vast majority of people kind of sat in the middle of the top of the bell curve. And then you do have the kind of laggards and those that are kind of resistant to change, resistant to things moving forward, and kind of can sometimes be the bad apples. And I think there's still the old adage of hire slowly and fire fast does come into play, because if you're not careful, some of those bad apples can turn quite rotten quite quickly, and it doesn't take long for dissent to kind of spread, because everybody likes to believe the conspiracy theory, not necessarily the facts.
Yeah, so when people are recruiting organisations, or if you're a one-person band you're recruiting, in general, people try to recruit people like them. Mm-hmm. So that's okay, but it means that the strengths you've now got double the strengths. and the blind spots, weaknesses, whatever we want to call that, are now doubled as well.
Yeah.
So you haven't got any cover on those parts of it. And part of the personality piece in an organisation is you've got the organisation of the individual, you've got the organisation of the personality of the team they're in. Could be the same personality as the leader of that team, by the way. As people follow and so on. But then when you go wider and you've got what's the personality of the organisation? In other words, what's the ability to deliver what it wants to deliver? Then you've got such a powerful force where, if there's a problem or challenge that occurs that nobody has any experience in, if you've got that personality within the business, doesn't matter where it is, and you've recognised the top 20% of your talent, the people that do want to go on, and the people that you can help and support into more senior positions, they will sort it for you. They come up with a more practical solution than you ever can in a boardroom because you're not in that role.
Yeah.
So in the power of getting the personality of the business right and balanced and, with a wide scope. So you've got lots of logic on it, you've got lots of process on it, you've got lots of numbers on it, and you've also got the more thought-provoking, controversial, extrovert versus introvert type. The more that you have, you're going to have more to deal with in terms of managing that and keeping it all in the middle ground as much as possible.
Yeah.
But that means that your ship, the business you're steering, has got a much better chance of where it wants to go, rather than just heading in one direction and hoping.
And it's really interesting because when you read a lot of the journals around delivering projects and delivering high-performing teams and things, there's a lot of kind of evidence out there that kind of suggests that actually you need to be building teams that are multidisciplined and have different characters in there. Otherwise, you just get the same views all the time, and you won't actually have all the skills necessary to push things forwards. So things like the introvert versus extrovert, absolutely, or analyst versus artist, or whatever kind of other matrices you want to play at. The key thing is just understanding the makeup of the people that are going to be in your team, and making sure you've got a bit of a mix.
Yeah, and also, organisations, when they do come up with the ideas, they don't always test them. They just think, that's a good idea, let's go. It takes 2 years to put the project in place, so they're late to market anyway. It costs twice as much, at least, than people thought it was going to be. And the project team seem to be separate from the organisation. So suddenly this thing's launched, and nobody's kind of aware of it. And then they're back to this, there's a plan to get rid of us all through automation.
Yeah.
For that type of thing. So getting, again, that's where that 20% of the business acting as your talent, they're also your advocates, because when those people come into a room, you say, we've got an idea, there's a whiteboard behind me, it's blank, there's nothing on it, look. Right? Yeah. So you're going to determine how we're going to deliver this idea. Well, if people come up with the ideas and they're going to be carried out, they're going to be your greatest advocates, as long as you can unblock any blockages in the business. And not only are they your greatest advocates, they're working at a level in your operation in the business that influences directly the people at the sharp end like you never can.
Yeah.
If your colleague or your manager's telling you something, that's different than somebody standing up, on a Zoom like this from the board telling you how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I think that, again, the larger the company, the more they should be looking for consistency. So if you put something in this end of the model, it comes out this end.
Yeah.
Same thing goes in, it comes out. And the larger your organisation gets, the more complex, the more European, the more global, the bigger the challenge of getting consistency. So what happens then is businesses tend to write processes and procedures and X, Y, and Z, but not. Firstly, then that might not translate properly into the right language locally. It certainly won't translate into the local culture, and you've got this top-down approach to how the business should run. And again, by the time it gets through the levels, goes through those countries, it gets exaggerated, shorter timescales, higher performance level, and so on.
Let alone the other factors, like, for example, you start to stifle creativity and flexibility. You start to see people working to rule. You start to enforce wrong series of measures, which enforces the wrong kind of behaviour. So, yeah, there's a whole series of minefields around making sure you get the right processes and systems in place, and also making sure the right size for the organisation. Because if you try to put too much process in too quickly, you just cripple the business. You have to make sure you're getting the right size.
Yeah, and the word transformation has been bandied around in the last kind of decade. It's almost like the word urgent. Do you know what I mean? It's been used so often that people, it's so what?
Yeah.
So my recommend is if you're going to do anything, you want to change your business and the way it operates, please don't use transformation and urgent, particularly in the same sentence. Because, do you know what I mean? It's like an urgent email, which is with the red exclamation mark on it. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's the engagement of the people and the willingness to want to do it. Do you know what I mean? You can tell people over and over and over again, and in the end you'll put them in a corner and they'll walk away because you just talk to them and talk to them and talk and told them, rather than asking for, how do you think we could solve this? How do you think we could grow that? The people who work in organisations have skills outside that organisations which are never brought in.
Yeah.
Somebody might run a scout troop, for instance, take 150 people away for a weekend camping on a mountain.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that's got to be put in place to organise that, incredible, yet those skills are not incentivised to be brought into the business whatsoever.
Yeah. Which is a real crying shame, because there's lots of people that kind of got lots of things there that could really help them. Right, we've got a couple of questions coming up. So Sandra says, love your employees and they will take care of your clients. That's a good thought, and I think that's true. For some employees, definitely give them love, show them attention, make sure you give them a nurturing environment, and that will allow them to grow. And yeah, absolutely, they will definitely help you with your business.
Sandra, I'd say on that, Martin, absolutely, Sandra. Many companies will tell you customers are the most important thing. They're pretty important, aren't they? And I work for an organisation who said number one in customer service. Well, it's one thing saying it, it's the other thing delivering it. And if your employees are not delivering that customer service to your customers, it's the employees that are the most important thing. Do you know what I mean? That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was it who said, sorry, the greatest asset and greatest liability you have in your business walks on two legs? And crumbs, I can't remember who said it, but it's absolutely true, because when you absolutely empower people, you give them the tools, you give them the flexibility, etc., and freedom to really be able to use their talents in the best possible way, and that they're positive and they do that. You can move mountains with any organisation. I've seen small teams of 3 or 4 people move more than what a big team of 50 or 60 people can do, just because they're motivated and positively minded.
You think of that, Martin, and I'll talk a little bit about volunteering, because volunteer organisations they might not be the most skillful bunch of people in the world, but they've got the enthusiasm and passion to make it want to succeed. And if you've got any group of people like that, you might be doing parkrun with your new body shape. I don't know, but over 1 million people every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, or other times around the world, get together and they run 5Ks in local parks. The volunteers, normally you need 20 or more volunteers to get one of those working. So you imagine with 1 billion people, you need quite a lot of volunteers. Yeah. And these people, no matter what the weather, every Saturday morning, they're out there at 8 o'clock, before everybody starts at 9 o'clock, getting it sorted. When people have finished and they've gone through the finish funnel, then people are getting their times for them. All the barcodes you get have to be put back in numerical order, and so on and so forth. But that enthusiasm, again, if you could grab that and nothing else, and you can help shape and point all that energy and enthusiasm outwards towards your customers, there's no real competition to that.
Yeah.
Nobody else in your industry has got that right.
Yeah. So I haven't done search, but I believe, from what I can remember, it's Instagram was the company I was thinking of, because prior to them being bought out for several billion US dollars, I think there was only 13 people actually running that business. I mean, 13 people building $1 billion business, that's just fantastic, isn't it? So it kind of just really proves the point. If you get a small team, really good people, kind of focused in the right end of place, nice and creative, and you've got sort of the mixed disciplines and stuff, you can just move all sorts. Sandra also makes another good point here, being in regards to if everybody in your business agrees there can be no growth. Because if you can be proved wrong, then it can be a winner. You can actually then grow and change your business. And I think that's is a really good point. I think, and that takes there's this balance in there between pride and humility that I think every business and every business owner, in fact everybody who works in a business, has to have. Because at some point you kind of have to have the pride in your own work that you're going to push things forward and make things happen and really look to do the best you possibly can, but at the same time have the humility to kind of recognise when you're wrong and actually take that learnings on board. It's win some, learn some kind of approach.
Yeah, there's a book called Rocket Fuel. I'm struggling. It's a thing tonight, isn't it? Remembering the names of people. I can't remember the name of the book. It's called Rocket Fuel.
Right.
And it talks about, it's pretty structured in the way it talks about running the business. But one of the takeaways for me personally is that I guess what you call the top of the organisation, that should be the visionary person, the person that's working on the future, because you don't have to walk far down the high street here in Southport, Beals. Don't know if you've heard of that. That's been going since the 1850s, I think. Closing down sale, Debenhams, gone.
Yeah.
And on it goes. Because they've not stepped in line with, it's back to the board not being the same as, in any way whatsoever, the same as your customers. Not stepping in the shoes of your customers and seeing what's coming on. Like now, if you're a business and you're not on social media, you're behind.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really behind. So having that person who's focused externally, looking at those things and bringing the ideas in, is one role. And then the second role, it says, is that you've got the doer, I guess, the person in the organisation that makes sure that the business produces and can produce what it's aiming for. So you're producing and you're getting the vision coming in and you go forward that way. So Rocket Fuel was the book. Can't remember the author, but those two roles in any business, even if you're a one-person band again, just having a little bit of time. If you're very much the logical person who's doing everything, it's breaking away on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock or 5 or 6 or 7, what it is, and just spending 2 hours twice a week in your diary thinking about your business, where it can go, what's in the way, what the opportunities are. And if you're the other way around, you're a bit of a visual person, a blue sky thinker, then it's twice a week in your diary, 2 hours, to make sure you've got the structure and the workings in your business that it can actually work, and you're not moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the amount of debt that organisations can acquire if they're not careful by doing that, both technical and operational. I mean, everyone understands commercial debt because there's kind of numbers behind it. But actually, when you kind of look under the covers of many organisations and actually think you're carrying over so many out-of-date processes or workarounds or more members of staff because you've got things that just don't work and you've just not finished off that kind of piece of the project or that piece of your change or even implemented something correctly. You can't just put more sticking plasters around it. And all of a sudden you kind of look back at the organisation and there's just like a litany of this like technical debt and operational debt that you can just sort out. And once you've done that, the business kind of breathes a sigh of relief. It improves its velocity for change. It increases its profitability. It kind of can move forward. So yeah, it's always a good one.
Something we learn here, Martin. We make mistakes. Any business. There are 8 of us in. We've got a small group of companies. There are 8 of us that are in the group, and we made a mistake in terms of what we do by starting to build functions. So you are the finance person, you are the marketing person, you are the sales person, you're the strategy person, You are the operational person. And what we found was that that's great. And then we tried to make the operational person the best operational person in the world, understanding every in and out of operations there could ever be. So we sent them on courses, and the marketing people went on courses, and so on. The strategy person went on courses. Some of them were Chartered Institute of Management, level 4, 5, 7, and so on. And what we got back was a lot of textbook understanding, but not much practical know-how of how to work your business and grow it. Mm-hmm. So in the end, what we worked out is that actually the people we got, let's build the roles around them and not try and fit them into those roles.
Yeah.
Our finance person loves spreadsheets. That's what she absolutely loves. Yeah. She's waiting for a set of spreadsheets, I know right now, and really excited.
Yeah.
Each to their own. So anything to do with spreadsheets, whether it's financial, not financial, process, whatever it happens to be. So at the moment, that person, the spreadsheets that she's waiting for, I won't name her because she's my wife, Jan. Okay. What she's waiting for is a database of 9,600 customers that she can make clean, get rid of duplication. The phone numbers in that database some have got brackets around, some have got 0044 plus 44. So when you try and segment and work with that customer base, it's nonsense, it's rubbish. So anything to do with spreadsheets and numbers, whether it's financial or not financial, Jan's our go-to person every single time. Yeah. Before then, it would have been somebody in marketing who isn't into spreadsheets, trying to get this data and do all the mathematical things around it. That's not their skill. So what we learned, if it helps people, is trying to make people that all-round good corporate citizen who's great at what the function says they should be great. I've never met anybody like that in my life. You may have, I don't know. No. But where people have got a skill, supporting and helping that person to become mega skillful at it means that when they go for their next role, that we can proudly say that we help develop some of those skills. Yeah. But they're going to be podium finishers in that skill for the organisation they're going to. They're going to be first, second, or third in terms of what there is available. That person will be that.
Yeah. Absolutely, I think that's a brilliant way forward, and probably a nice story to end on there. Actually, I think we've kind of brought it full circle from troubled businesses, how we can identify potential solutions, what kind of tool we can use for it. We looked at a few books, we looked at what good looks like, looked at how to make good happen. So I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation this evening. Hopefully everybody else who's been listening has enjoyed it. Janine and who else we got on the call? Louise, and Sandra. Hope you guys have all really enjoyed it. And Sarah, hope you've enjoyed it too. And Helen, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, actually, I haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you on the group again. And I hope you've enjoyed the conversation too, David.
I certainly have, and I was really in the background there, Martin, looking at Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman.
Right.
Gino Wickman and Mark C. Winters. That was the book we're referring to. And apparently, it's £8.96 on Amazon in Kindle version, or free if you want to sign up for audio, or Audible audiobooks. There you go.
Audible, I think I'll get the Audible one. It's kind of it's my go-to as a bit of a university in the car, to be frank. I do like my twofers. Get two things for the price of one. Drive around and learn something. Well, thank you very much once again for your time, David. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as you guys are aware, we've got a live Q&A happening next week where we'll be looking at some time management and productivity type tooling as requested by Mohammed Azif. And looking forward to speaking to you all then. In the meantime, have a great week ahead and bye for now.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, Sandra. Take care, everybody.